Hi everyone, welcome to Jacob's Journey, where we rediscover your favorite movies through a new lens. My name's Jacob,
I'm Spencer.
and this is episode 2 of a series on the channel called The Road to Zack Snyder's Justice League that will be premiering over the next few weeks.
This week, we're revisiting the film Wonder Woman 1984, released in 2020 and directed by Patty Jenkins.
In the DC Extended Universe timeline, we leave off from where we last saw Diana Prince in Wonder Woman as she faces brave new challenges in the 1980s.
Before we dive in, we'd like to turn your attention to an organization that is not a sponsor or an affiliate of any kind for this channel, but simply an organization close to the DC fandom and the Snyder family's hearts. We encourage you to consider either visiting or donating to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention.
The Snyder Cut movement to date has risen over $500,000 for this organization, which provides tools, resources, and education to those who struggle with their mental health or have suffered from the loss of a loved one to suicide. Visit their website via the link in the description. Once again, they are not a sponsor or affiliated with this channel in any capacity. Let's dive into it, Spencer. First, as always, let's discuss our personal relation to the film. So yeah, why don't you start us off?
Um, so to be honest, I wasn't gonna watch it first came out, but HBO Max kind of has been hitting lately, and my little sister loves DC, and she's like, "Let's watch it. Let's watch it." I'm like, "Okay." So I believe it was like it came out on Christmas, correct?
It did. Yep, Christmas of last year.
So I think the day after Christmas we watched it, and I really enjoyed it. I had fun watching it. To be honest, sometimes I slip in and out of like actually watching it, but I've watched it twice now, so I have seen it
Mm-hmm.
all the way through. So yeah, yeah, I'd say it was a fun watch.
Yeah.
Mm.
I watched it. I actually watched it the same day as you. Um I remember hearing about this movie a long time ago. I think in 2018, it was always known that there was going to be a second Wonder Woman after the first one was so successful. But it was, I believe, in 2018 when it was revealed that it would be set in the 80s. I envisioned actually a totally different movie. I envisioned more of like a spy thriller centered around the Soviet Union and the Cold War. Um,
Ah,
yeah, that's always how I envision it. Um, but regardless, I was really excited when like more and more stuff came out about, what it was going to be like. I am somewhat a 1980s enthusiast myself.
mm,
And was really disappointed about the release date being moved multiple times because this movie was supposed to come out in November of 2019 at first.
see, I was going to ask about that because I thought it
Yeah,
was supposed to come out before the pandemic.
yeah. So it was supposed to come out in November of 2019, and then apparently that wasn't enough time for like Patty to finish the movie, so Warner Brothers moved it to June 5th of 2020. And well, we all know what happened. COVID-19
Mm.
kind of happened. So they hoped that they could push it back to August, I believe August 14th. They hoped, everyone at that point kind of hoped that theaters would be back to normal by late summer. Well, that didn't work
Yeah.
out either. So then it got pushed to October 20th. And then finally to December 25th.
Holy
Like,
crap! Wait, it had 5 different release dates
if I count them,
or
November,
4.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's crazy.
For someone who was very anxious to see this movie, not fun. Not not fun at all. Um
Yeah.
but yeah. And then I saw it on the 26th in theaters actually, safe, totally distance. Um
Oh, really?
yeah, the
You got to
the
see it in theaters?
26th. Yeah, I got to see it in theaters. It was a
That's
great
sick.
time. So Spencer, what was your immediate reaction to this movie that you can
So
at least
yeah,
remember from
I
rewatching it?
for me watching. Okay, so I kind of touched on that. Like, I enjoyed it. Um, I have to say though, after my second watch, I was like, I don't think I'm going to watch this movie again, and not because I think I hate it or anything like that. It's just like in the grand scope of like the movies I could watch, I just don't think I'd ever revisit it. But like I said before, it's a fun watch. So if you like superhero movies, you like DC, it's definitely a fun watch.
Yeah,
I would
and
recommend it.
it for sure, and there's nothing wrong with, there's absolutely nothing wrong with not liking a movie. Um, like it happens. It's happened to me many times. I've watched movies that other people like really enjoyed, and I was like, not for me,
Mm,
and that's perfectly okay. I'm sure, especially since this was the most divisive DC movie since Batman v Superman for the internet, especially. I would definitely say that there are probably going to be some people in the comments who are like, this movie sucked or whatever. It's perfectly fine. Like, have an opinion, be respectful about it, and that's what matters. Um,
yeah.
my immediate reaction, um, well, first initially was, it was, I loved it when I saw it in theaters. It was the best experience I had in theaters for a DC movie, specifically since Aquaman.
Really?
Yeah, since Aquaman,
Oh, okay. Okay.
because I saw Birds of Prey. Like that was the last movie I saw before the
Man,
pandemic. Not
I
my
think me
thing.
too. Actually, to be honest,
Yeah,
I
that
can't remember if I've seen anything after.
yeah. And by the way,
Huh.
that's not in our marathon because that timeline wise takes place after Justice League. Um, if it was
Okay.
before, we would cover it, but it just personally was not my thing. So I kind of left the theater not really. I was kind of like, okay, whatever. But
Hmm.
for this one, I had a really great experience. Rewatching it, I definitely felt like there were definitely some issues. There are some issues with
Yeah,
this
there's
movie.
some issues.
There are some issues, and we'll get into those. But that overall, for me, the movie had a great lesson to be learned and a very wholesome vibe to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's talk about the plot, Spencer. Let's talk about the plot.
Okay. Yes, the plot's kind of um I w- I don't know. I would say it's kind of straightforward
Mm,
with the exception of Steve coming back. I think that was kind of odd.
yeah,
Uh but I guess in the grand scope of this movie, I would say that's the least odd thing that would happen. And
sure.
uh but like you said, there's a lot of cool in like the first movie too, there's a lot of like wholesome um like undertones, and not even undertones, but like the whole lesson to be learned type thing.
Yeah,
And that's kind of what the whole movie's about, is about like careful what you wish for type thing.
yeah.
um I think if you look at the movie start to finish, you can, and if you really want to try, you can poke so many holes in the plot. And that's fine, plot holes are fine, that's always going to happen. uh but like you really got to watch your step or you will fall in those plot holes. So
That's a good way to put it. I like that.
yeah,
That's good.
I yeah, I think the plot's kind of my least favorite part of the movie.
For me, here's one thing that we discussed in the last episode about Wonder Woman. Um, the time jump, the whole beginning with her childhood thing, and
Oh
then,
yeah.
or like there was a difference in time between the beginning of the movie and the rest of the movie. I think that was done really well. I think that was done much better this time because there was a purpose to it. And the purpose was basically like you get the lesson of the whole movie in the opening sequence, which of course is about her in this Olympic. The Amazons, host the Olympics because why not? And Diana tries to, as a young child, cheat and learns that there's nothing good in lying and that the truth is what matters. Where before the whole, okay, we're gonna present you with the present day and then go back in time and then go back to the present day at the end was very much like just gimmicky. Whereas this time I was like, okay, so you're teaching me something. Diana learned something when she was a kid, and
Hmm.
now the rest of the movie is about her finally overcoming that, because she cheated and learned, didn't fully learn her lesson yet. Here's what I will say, about the plot as well. Could have been longer. Um, in fact, I believe Patty mentioned in some interviews that it originally was longer. This is not a release the Snyder cut.
What?
This is not a release the Snyder cut thing. Most directors' cuts are initially longer. Um, but it, she said that she would have preferred it to be longer. I feel like it could have been longer because I feel like the mythological side of things, which we enjoyed so much in the first one,
Right.
needed to be explored a bit more. Um, because Wonder Woman, I feel like to me is the perfect place to start the DCEU. If you're going chronologically, not just because of the time, but because I feel like very, very early on, DC just kind of said screw it with the whole, oh, we're not going to try to explain away that these characters are gods, that they just are gods, and deal with it. Like Marvel with Thor especially was kind of like, oh well, we consider them gods because they're they live a long time and they have powers. But like
Yeah.
literally DC adapted like, oh no, they're just like gods, like how you read in like the myths and stuff. And Wonder Woman deals with that, especially like the whole plot is about Diana finding out that she's literally a goddess. Like
Hmm.
this one has like sprinkles of like mythology, but like we don't actually get to meet the god behind the stone. Um I also
Yeah,
is like do you feel that too?
I do. I like, because we like the Greek mythology or
Yeah.
Roman mythology, whatever it is, in the last movie. And like you said, it's sprinkled, but I felt like is it the wishing stone? The
Yeah, you can call it that.
um wishing stone. I felt was so like random and
Mm.
kind of odd in the way they handled it. And like I said, I won't try to like poke too many holes
No, I
in the
mean
plot, but
I think you're absolutely right, and I'll tell you why. Because I think that it would have been really interesting if they had presented the god behind the stone and given it more personality, and then
yeah.
given that god motivations as to why they want to do this. Because otherwise, it's pretty much just like a stone that exists, and it's like a character. Like literally, present a character who does things in the film but doesn't have any dialogue or any appearance. Like that's kind of what happened. Um, I also want more explanation for Asteria. That also kind of plays into like this needed to be longer, and more mythology. Like Asteria,
Yeah.
the one who wore the original Golden Eagle armor that you see later in the movie. Played by the wonderful Linda Carter, by the way. Excellent little cameo there. Here's what I did like. I really enjoyed Steve being the one who's kind of out of the water, like out of his own environment, instead of Diana. Like, it was really funny to kind of like flip the whole
Yeah.
what was in the original movie where Diana's like, learning new things about like a whole new world, and like there's this whole sequence where Steve is just like, holy crap, like what is this?
Totally out of his element.
Yeah. um
It's yeah, I would agree with that. That is a cool little tidbit.
yeah. And there's definitely like a subplot to Cheetah, that has a lot to do with um you know the female perspective of harassment. that
Mhm.
I'll talk about later. But yeah, I mean, to me, it was. I mean, I think you're definitely right. There are definitely some holes, 100%.
Yeah.
And I think I have even more of those to talk about later. But yeah, yeah. But what did you think of the actors and actresses who played their roles in this one?
So that's what I think is probably the best part of the movie.
Ah,
Pedro Pascal's performance of Maxwell is just like it's fun, and he was totally like into it. You could tell he was having fun with it. Gal Gadot's always, she's always great.
she's perfect.
Steve's good. I don't remember what's his actor's name.
Chris?
Yeah, I think that's all I got to say about the performances. They are really good though. Like I would say all of the acting, minus some of the side characters, are like excellent and really good.
Yeah, I would agree. Max like stole the show.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
He definitely played like the maniacal villain, like the maniacal rich billionaire villain. Um, like just perfectly. I remember I think I walked out of the theater and he was honestly probably my favorite performance. Um, I'll say this, it's really cool to see Diana in her archaeology environment because if you really think about it, like we don't actually really see her in that until this movie. Like
Mhm.
Bruce Wayne, like Batman has his alter ego where he's Bruce. We've seen plenty of billionaire Bruce Wayne. Like we haven't seen Diana Prince like in her element. So that was really cool to see. Um
Yeah,
I wanna give a shout out to Lily Aspel, who plays young Diana in the opening Olympic sequence. She did all of her own stunts.
really.
Yeah, that's all
Wow,
her.
she did look like a gymnast.
Yeah,
I could
yeah,
totally tell.
yeah. She nailed that. So shout out to her. Fantastic.
Yeah,
Um, and then that point about I want to talk about Kristen Wiig, who played
Kristen
Bar.
Wiig.
Yeah, she played Barbara slash Cheetah. Um, it was, and at first, like when I left the movie, uh, the movie theater the first time, I didn't really understand what her whole thing was. Then I watched it because it came out on HBO Max the same day. Um, I watched it at home that night, and then it clicked. Cheetah is a predator. At the beginning of the movie, she's prey to like creepy guys. And so the whole story is that she goes from being prey to the predator. The dreamstone is taking away the heart of her that would, make her a, kind person, and she's becoming her own enemy of sorts. And I don't know, that just kind of like strikes me as like that's a really cool idea. Could
That
it
is
have
really cool.
could it have been manifested more clearly? Sure, for sure. But like that, I don't know, that's just really cool to me.
Yeah, and to expand upon that is like, the fight with Diana and Cheetah, she's like in her kind of whatever that suit is, but it kind of looks like a bird.
Yeah, the golden eagle
And
armor.
she yeah, so like an eagle, and I guess it's a bird of prey, which is kind of a cool little, maybe that's kind of an Easter egg, I don't know.
it's definitely
But
it's definitely a reference that could be made for sure.
yeah. But I thought that was kind of cool too, that they were both kind of predators going at each other
That's true,
in
actually.
that kind of way.
I didn't think about it on Diana's side, but you're absolutely right there. Um, yeah, yeah. So I think overall the performances were pretty great. In terms of the music, the music was done by Hans Zimmer, who makes his return to DC
Legend.
movies. Oh yeah, the legend, the goat. After having not done DC movies since Batman v Superman, in 2016, so this was his first project in 4 years, on the DC side of things. Um, so shout out to him because this is what I think is like a beautiful score. I think it's beautiful.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it stood out to me as pretty good. A lot of the times, music, and maybe not in films so much, but music can make or break some forms of media.
Yeah.
And I would say like this, it accentuates. It only adds to the experience. It doesn't take away. And of course, it's Hans Zimmer. So, and also her the Wonder Woman theme is
Mm,
incredible, and it's super catchy, and it's iconic.
yeah.
So
Yeah, for
yeah, it's
sure.
great.
I think it's incredible that, we have the Superman theme from the old movies that has, like it's so great that her first theme, right? Because we can all like think of like Superman like da 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 da. Please, Warner Brothers, don't sue me for humming that in this YouTube video. Um, but this is like Wonder Woman's first like motif, if you will, and I think it's great how easily it's caught on. It's definitely a tribute to the Superman movies from back in the day. Lots of
Mm.
fanfare, lots of like really bright strings and horns. Um, I don't know if you picked up on this, Spencer, but there is actually a piece within the score that appears at the end of the movie that is actually in another DC movie, a DCEU
Oh,
movie, actually, specifically, that we will be
oh,
watching in 2 weeks. It is Beautiful Lie from Batman v Superman, the opening sequence music, also done by Hans Zimmer. Uh,
huh.
yeah.
Oh, there you go.
If I may enlighten you on what that scene is, it is the scene where Diana gives her speech to everyone. Like Max is standing up on the thing,
Mm-hmm.
and then she turns, and starts talking to the people who are on the other end of the satellite, and you just hear dun 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 dun. Well, while she talks about it,
Wait, really?
yeah, that's
That's sick.
yeah, and then
Okay, that's really cool.
of course, you learn about Maxwell Lord's past in that little montage. Um, if you remember, you see him bullied as a kid and then try to become a businessman really quickly. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but that whole thing, I think it just really, because if you think about what the beautiful lie like is in this overall film, like what would you say that is?
That's the kind of the be careful what you wish for. Your wishes will not solve your problems.
Yeah,
And typically they, your dreams or whatever
right.
don't either. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
I just thought it was really cool that they used that.
Yeah, that's really cool.
I wanna also talk about how, and this was a big complaint of the movie, that there was not a lot of 1980s songs in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
There is one um, that I can think of, and it plays fairly briefly as Diana enters the gala um, to find Maxwell Lord for the museum. And I want to switch things over to Captain Marvel for a second. That movie takes place in the 90s in the MCU, and
Okay.
it would not let you, like, for a second forget that you were in the 90s. Because it was song after song after reference that
Oh
was
yeah.
like, hey, you're in the 90s. It just became like, okay, I get, can I focus on like the story? Like, um, so in my opinion, I think not having an 80s song every like 10 minutes was perfectly fine. Yeah.
I'll
But
say to the other side of that is like I forgot that we were in the 80s sometimes.
ah,
Like and it kind of you'd be like, oh, their hairstyles or oh their clothing or whatever, but sometimes I was just like thinking it's called Wonder Woman 1984. I
mhm.
would think there would be more like 80s stuff to it, but sometimes I just kind of forgot.
I will say this. Um, there was a missed opportunity in using synthesizers in the score. Like,
Yes.
there are hardly any of those. And I personally think that the score, even if it wasn't like literally including 80 songs, like you're telling me that like I think there are like two or three tracks where there's like hints of electronic sounds, and I know you're a fan of the synthesizers, so let's talk about the visuals. Um, like, because we talked a bit about the visual effects in the last Wonder Woman movie, how effective they were,
Mhm.
how maybe not effective some of them were. What was your opinion overall on this movie?
Maybe I'm wrong about this, and maybe I am, but let me tell you what it is first. I think they kind of reeled it in with the visual effects for most of the movie. Again, it is 2 hours and 30 minutes, so there are a lot of scenes that require it.
What do you mean by reeled in?
Um, I don't know if they used as much visual effects in this movie as they did the last one. Maybe I'm
Gotcha.
wrong about that.
I,
There are several scenes that are like it's very much so,
yeah.
but even then, it's kind of simpler stuff compared like in comparison to like uh the Justice League or Marvel's stuff. It's kind of just action stuff, and rather than like these big ships blasting lasers and stuff. And there definitely is that kind of stuff, especially
Hmm.
with like when people wish for nukes and. But I think the visual effects are perfect, and I'm
Mm,
gonna maybe I'm wrong about that, but I think they were used in a great way.
yeah. I would definitely agree. I think overall the visual effects for this movie I do prefer to the first. Um, high contrast in the colors, plenty of vibrancy that I think mimicked the tone of like like what would you think of like a movie in the 1980s? You think of not necessarily like saturation, but I think like vibrant colors.
Yeah, yeah.
Really deep blacks, really bright tones, and that's what I think we got. Which speaking to Wonder Woman for a second, the cinematographer for that movie, his name currently escapes me, um, but he actually, um, he talked about how he used paintings from the early 20th century to inspire the sort of the colors and the lighting for the first movie. So it doesn't surprise me at all that this movie mimicked the art, I guess you could say, of the period in which the movie takes place. Um,
Hmm.
I do want to mention though, upon this watch, if you watch the opening sequence, the opening Olympic sequence, um, there are some very, very, very obvious audience members who are, I'm talking like the Sims level CGI.
Really?
Yeah, and
Oh no.
this was my third time watching this movie, and I didn't notice it until this one. I like just like start looking into the crowd more in the opening credits, and it'll hit you. Like
Oh no.
I'm talking like the weird clapping, you know, like the stiff arm clapping that you see.
Oh yeah.
Like I, the best thing I can think of is like even like the like a sports video game where like there's the generic audience in the background. Like, yeah. So
Oh no, yeah.
it's got it has its moments, but that's all I could really see. Um, also, shout out, by the way, to the fact, and this is kind of random, but I guess I'll shoot it out there. They really filmed this movie in Washington, D.C., um, where the movie takes place, a good amount of it. Um, and I won't say I'm not gonna tell the internet where I live, but I will say that I have been to DC, and um, that like when they go on the metro, you go down beneath. Hello. That is the actual metro. Like I've been on those stairs.
Oh really?
Yeah, I remember sitting in the theater and thinking, I've 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 been there. Like,
That's cool. I've never had that experience before.
yeah, it was wild. And then I think in another scene, like when they're looking at art around DC, like you can see a building in the background that it could be wrong, but I believe is the Native American Museum that I went to as recently as 2019. Like
Wow.
it was just kind of like a whoa, they were like their kind of deal. So
Hmm.
that was so the connections to Zack Snyder's Justice League. As we move forward with the series, I want to sort of contextualize each of these movies within, the one we're working towards. And it's placed within the larger cinematic universe. Um, because there is a big debate about whether or not this movie retcons um both Wonder Woman and Batman v Superman. Um, because of course Batman v Superman we haven't watched yet, but there is a line of dialogue where Diana basically kind of says that she walked away from mankind for 100 years. After the events of the first Wonder Woman in World War One. So obviously, here's my question: do you think that this movie interferes with that canon?
I mean, it would sound like it.
Mm,
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing coming out in between now and the new Justice League to like clear that up.
mm.
Um, what do you think? Is there like a loophole they have somewhere?
I think there is. The DCEU has become much more of a loosely connected canon since the fallout from 2017's Justice League, when they changed course and started making each of these movies as if they were their own projects, not connected to a
Uh-huh.
larger universe. Um, but I think that there is a way to view this movie as if it were still following that canon. Because, first of all, technically, Diana is still a mystery to the world. Even like when she's in the mall, she's destroying the security cameras and she's reported on as a mysterious female savior. After the mall sequence in the beginning. Um,
Hmm.
I take it not. I now take that line in BVS, and I assume it's going to be continued on in Justice League. That it's going to be discussed. Diana's hesitation before coming into the world as a proud hero, like standing kind of in the sun with the world looking at her, knowing
Uh-huh.
who she is, that sort of deal. Um,
Okay, I can get behind that. I see what you're saying.
I think you could. Do I think it's the like definitive answer? Not necessarily, because
Hmm.
again, she is. You get a sense of pessimism from her line in BVS, where she's like, "Yeah, I'm tired of dealing with mankind." After World War One, like I didn't even want to help them, and I think that that was Snyder's intention. I think that that was probably how he wanted to do it, but Um, this movie very much ends with kind of an optimistic view that Diana has, but then at the same time, uh, I do not think that anyone, even a goddess like Diana, could walk away from what happens in this movie. Like near the end, of course, with the everyone massively, wishing and selfishly wishing. I think I don't think that there is any way that she didn't have moments since then where it was like, oh my god, like that happened. Like my
Yeah. It's just too much of a huge thing to be um like pessimistic about. Like when did it's almost what 30 years after
yeah,
this
yeah.
movie.
Yeah, it takes place around there.
So you could maybe make the argument that a lot of time has passed and she could kind of look back on it and be like, "Oh, that was crazy. Humans suck."
Mm.
But I lean more towards the thought of like, especially in the first movie where she was so optimistic to help people and she wanted to, and she's like, "Oh, Hades is loose and whatever." So I don't know. I don't know what the answer is to that.
Yep, you know what? And that's okay. Sometimes there are not answers to this. I think it's okay to have questions, open-ended because here's something that I it's a criticism, but it's a criticism of something that does not happen. Uh there's a sequence in the uh you know near the end where everyone's wishing for things and then they all renounce their wishes. Um and this has been discussed a lot within the DC fandom. Um, Someone tell me why there wasn't a cameo of young Bruce Wayne wishing for his parents back and then having them
Oh,
yanked again from him.
dang. Holy crap.
Someone tell me why that wasn't, like, was that even discussed? Like, and I get it, like it's Patty's movie. She does what she wants. If she doesn't want to have a cameo from from another movie, that's
Mm-hmm.
fine. But think of that impact, like a young Bruce Wayne literally having everything, and it would have taken place 4 years after Bruce Wayne lost his parents in the DCEU because he loses his parents in 1980. So he will have been 4 years later still dealing with every all the trauma, you know,
Yeah.
and then
And that would just radicalize him even more if something like that happened.
it would certainly definitely like it would push him towards becoming Batman. Like honestly, if that
Mm-hmm.
like I could even see that being sort of um like referenced later on if there had ever been another Batman project with Ben Affleck of like that sort of being the breaking point cuz he could have like healed somewhat after the initial blow, but like
Yeah.
dude, can you
Yeah,
imagine?
man. Taking those couple steps forward and just like 1,000 back. Like,
Yeah,
man.
that would have been rough. Um if and I understand that you do not have similar feelings toward this movie as me, Spencer, but if you could pick one, what is your favorite moment?
I would have to say Pedro Pascal's character, Maxwell, his relationship with his kid. I
Ooh,
think I think that makes a really cool um evil villain. He's kind of evil, he's very selfish. But he has this side to you that you empathize with, like the flashbacks of him being bullied and him trying to like provide for his family.
yeah,
And yeah, he's a pretty cool antagonist. And
mm,
I really like that reason.
yeah,
Um yeah, I would say that was kind of my favorite part of the movie.
yeah. For me, it's like that's definitely a high point, but for me, it doesn't beat the moment where Diana trades Steve to get her powers back and save the world.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Yeah, okay, yeah.
like I when I saw that in theaters, like, you know, the eyes got misty. They got a little misty. Um,
Mm-hmm.
about that. That was rough to watch. 'Cause she like, and it's horrible because like it's not like where she gets to sit down and have a really nice goodbye. She basically yanks herself away from him. it's,
Yeah.
it's just like, oh, okay, so you're just gonna do it that coldly. Guess I'll just deal with that. Um, but yeah, because the music swells. She she's actually running that fast in that scene, through the streets of DC, and just absolutely just like is like, all right, let's get back to being a hero for a second. um, but yeah, for me that is 100%. Um, where I was like, I love this movie. Um, so Spencer, you did not like this movie though, as nearly as much as I did. If anything that you have not already mentioned, what else can you list?
So I'll give some pushback on what you just said. My first watch, my favorite moment would have been what you with Diana and Steve.
Mm-hmm.
But after watching the second time, I think it kind of irks me. You know how she wished for him back, and didn't he take like some random dude's body,
Yeah.
and she had like no qualms with that. And then
Right.
she saw like all these horrible things going on because of the wishes, but she didn't want to like, and rightfully so, she didn't want to set Steve free or whatever. So the second time watching it, that kind of knocked it down for me because it was just kind of, it's kind of creepy
Mm.
that he's in like someone else's body and they're just fine with that. And again, that's the nitpicky like plot hole thing that really doesn't take away from my experience, but the second time it kind of did.
Yeah.
And and Cheetah's character was, and you brought up some good points that I didn't really think about um coming into this. But it was kind of like this, you know, I was just thinking like it's kind of a very crazy stretch for her to like when she gets a wish, it's to become a cat lady and attack I don't know. I thought that was kind of strange
It's
in
a
my
trope.
opinion.
It's a trope.
Yeah.
And you know what it
Yeah.
is? I call it the misunderstood nerd trope. And
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
it's in so many comic book movies. Like it's Catwoman in Batman Returns. It is uh Electro in The Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Yep. Yep.
Um it has been played, it has been done, and honestly, that is probably one of my biggest problems with this movie. Because again, I think that a there was a hint of what I mentioned earlier of
Mm-hmm.
this idea of her going from being prey to predator that was totally overlooked because of this trope.
Yes, exactly.
Hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I'm with you on that. The other big criticism I have is when not Chris, when Steve gets back into the pilot seat, if you will.
Oh, here we go.
He
This is what I was going to bring up too.
he just all of a sudden, first of all, he knows what a jet is, like because he physically says, and he says this because um whoever wrote the script was like, oh, we need to have a moment where where like the invisible jet is mentioned, because that is Wonder Woman's primary vehicle in the comics. So
Uh-huh.
when he says an invisible jet, I'm like, okay, uh-huh, I get it. But like Steve Trevor would have no freaking clue what a jet even is.
Yeah, there's like what 60, 70 year difference in time.
the first jet plane
Yeesh.
was conceived in the 30s, which is a whole 15, almost 15 years after Steve died. Like, unless in heaven they're like talking about jets, which we know they're not because Steve is astounded by all the new technology. One, he shouldn't know about it. Two, would not have a clue on how to fly it.
Yeah. They didn't have like computer electronic stuff in airplanes at that time.
No, just
Um, and then or I think she asked like a question like, "Oh, how do you know how to like fly?" And he goes, "Or how do you make it so easy?" And he says something like, "Oh, it's just air
wind and air.
and currents, and you just find those currents." I'm like, okay. And the other thing with that scene is she makes the plane invisible or the jet plane invisible.
That was random.
It's like you couldn't have done that for like anything else in the past two movies to like help out with all these things you could have done. And again, that's nitpicky, but I thought that was kind of strange.
I feel like this movie, at the end of the day, was a basic plot that is filled with a lot of distractions.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, overall for me, it's and this is gonna sound really weird, but it's a more enjoyable watch for me than the first Wonder Woman movie. Like purely
Yeah, I'd
based
agree.
purely based on like the emotions and the lessons to be learned. If you're gonna watch a movie and try to pick it apart, plot hole by plot hole, first of all, you're not gonna enjoy a lot of movies. Because
Most of them, 95% of them.
like movies are made by people are not perfect. Like you're gonna fall in a lot of holes if you're looking for plot holes. Let's just say that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are watching it that way, you're gonna get no enjoyment out of this. If you're looking for something that has a good message, I think yeah, I think you'll at
Yeah,
least walk away with something.
a good message, great performances, good score, good visuals. It's a solid movie. It's just when it comes to the plot, it's kind of like this windy mess of a lot of crazy stuff. But at the end of the day, it's fun.
Yeah,
I agree
yeah.
with that.
So what is your final? What would you give in terms of a final rating for this one, Spencer?
Are we talking 1 out of 10?
Yeah. Out of 10,
Um, I give it 6.
gives
I
it
give
a
it
6.
6.
Ladies and gentlemen, just barely beats the halfway point.
Yeah,
Yeah, crosses the line but doesn't quite run.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's nowhere near as good as a lot of movies I've seen, but like for the reasons I've said, it's fun.
yeah, gotcha. For me, it's a 8.5.
That's pretty high. It's pretty high.
It is. Whereas the first one was like 8 for me. This one like just like barely nudges out because I don't know. Again, it's the experience for me, but that's okay. Um, all right. So that's what we thought about. So we thought about Wonder Woman 1984, Spencer. Um, but next week we begin a movie that is very
Oh,
close to our hearts.
I'm excited about this one.
You're excited. Are you? I'm excited about it too because it just means we're closer and closer to
Mm-hmm.
the big finale of this little series. Man of Steel, ladies and gentlemen, next week will be our discussed movie. So yeah, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for fun discussions and debates, theories, and everything you could ever want to know about today's biggest movies. And shout out to Spencer for joining me along the way. And
Mm-hmm.
it's
Anytime.
it's gonna get really interesting over the next 3 weeks,
I'm excited. I'm so excited.
dude. It's hype. It's hype. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for watching.